I know I'm generally considered a soulless person.
It's true.
But I mean, I'm a Wall Street guy, but so I am considered soulless. But at the end of the day, the brain, and that's probably, I come back to this point that you ask me what advice do I give people over time? And I don't mean a very stereotypical, new age way, but more like, honestly, I think we got to think not only with your brains, but we also got to really think with our heart. And I think we've become so absorbed in just being rational beings, and everything has to be kind of, backed up and justified, and every step has to be a rational way. Sometimes lead with your heart. I mean, the gut feeling. The gut feeling comes from something, and it's almost an art. If the definition of age is being closer to death, then I'm old. But if the definition of the way I think about it, it's really more, I come back to it, where you're in your life and how do you think, what motivates you, what keeps you going. So the shift is, there's almost like a tectonic shift. Family structure changes. My wife and I have to figure out, kind of almost, rebuild our lives as a couple, as a family, like only two. And that's not implying crisis mode, but it's also going to be very different. It's, from having met, and there's all this excitement and pre-children, then you have a very structured distraction, children, work, and now it's like, okay, now we're going to be more a couple in the late 50s, early 60s, setting the stage kind of for the last third. So there's a lot of shift going on.
Okay.
Where it's going, so far it's going good, but I don't know. The only thing that I would wholeheartedly, and that I say I would do differently, and that I tell anybody who cares to listen, is how you spend your time with your children. Why am I saying this? I read, a few years ago, finally, probably too late, the statistic that 85% of the time you have with your children, you spend with them between their ages 0 and 18. And then the rest, the remaining 15%, you spend with your children between them being 18 and you dying. Say another 30 years, whatever that is. And far too often, was I not aware of that, and kind of went for this dinner with a client, took a trip, stayed later in the office at the cost of maybe not having been there for their homework or for a little shoulder they need to cry on. So I was too absorbed in that. But had I known this number, I think I would have done a different time allocation, for lack of a better word, or be more aware of that, because that is time you just cannot get back. Well, time is the only thing you cannot get back. I mean, let's face it. So I think the value of time. So this is one thing that I would advise myself, and I'm only too happy to share with anybody who cares to listen.
What was that for you?
It's very clear. 5.5 years ago, I mean, my children pretty much said to me, listen, Papa, you're like an asshole. You're like hard to be around. You're permanently grumpy. This is, you're unpleasant to be around. Either you change or you're out of here. Wow. And I give, them all, it was driven by my oldest daughter. I give them a lot of credit. I mean, that was hard. It was really, fuck, So they took me to a family therapist, and everybody kind of just spit it out. No, shit, man. So that was pretty hard, But then I said, okay, it's better late than never. And so I started working with a guy for the last 5 years, and it's a lot of points. I'm still probably grossly unaware on a daily basis of shit I say, how I offend people, and that's But at least as it comes to myself, relation to my family and members, that has, I think, certainly shifted through that.
Good morning, good afternoon, good whatever time it is to our listeners or viewers or however you're taking in this content. I'm Tim Cunningham, host of the podcast, The Niners, where we interview folks who are on the edge of something. Change coming, folks with nines moving into the next decade, maybe bringing a child into this planet. And what do we know? We don't know. We're still asking a lot of questions to see what we can learn from wise folks. Today, I'm sitting with my friend Michi. Michi, to begin, can you tell us how old are you today?
Today, I'm 59 years old, 59 and a half. Yep.
59 and a half. And where are you from and where do you live now?
I'm originally from Germany, but currently I live in New York City. Well, I've been living here for the last 28 years, to be honest.
Do you consider yourself a New Yorker? Is there a certain amount of time you have to live in the city to call yourself a New Yorker?
That's for another day's discussion. It's like, I guess after a certain while, you do consider yourself a New Yorker, but it's funny, the sense of home is still very different. Although I've lived more time in New York now than I've lived in my hometown in Germany, the sense of home and roots is still very different in Germany.
Okay. Where is your home?
You mean my home as in where I live right now, or my home or my hometown or my home, like my birthplace?
What do you consider home? Big home, big H.
Well, I consider actually, and that sounds contradictory to what I just said, I consider New York home right now, but my roots are in Germany. So big H in a way, I mean, whether you call it big H home, it's Germany. That's where I'm from. That's where my roots are, undeniably. But I consider home, my home base right now is here.
All right.
In New York.
So Michi, tell us a little bit about how you spend your time.
So on a number of things, I work for myself these days. I spent about 25 years working in the finance industry, or as I would call it, in the structured work environment. About 2.5 years ago, I was let go, and then I started my own business. So I spent the time between building a business, working as a small financial consulting firm, have some clients, bike riding, spending time with my family, although the kids are mostly out of the house, walking the dogs. And when I'm upstate, where I spend a lot of time cycling and in the garden or making fires.
I will share with the audience, Michi, you make great fires. You have a great sense of humor in making fun of how poorly I build fires in my fire pit. But I am grateful that for my birthday, you sent me a cord of wood and I've got the best fires I've ever had, at least in my 40s.
You finally have fires. Before it was little kindlings, flames, I mean, they didn't really deserve the name fire, but
I thought they were great. You don't know fire until you know fire, I guess.
But it's like with so many other things in life.
Plato's cave. Well, since you brought me out of the cave with fires, tell me a little, Michi, as you think about being 59, what excites you most about moving into the next decade?
So it's a funny thing. 60 sounds like old people. And I know I'm going to have to face it. 60, I say, wow, this used to be the old guys. I remember like when my father turned about 65, the mayor came. While it's a marker, I don't really think in decades, if you see what I mean. It's kind of, I really think more like, where am I right now? What phase of my life am I in? And don't get me wrong, the day I turned 67, that's a big number. But it's not that I think, oh, wow, what will the next decade bring? It's more like, gee, where am I in my life? And it just happens to be that I'm 59 and next year I'm going to be 60. But it's almost more an external marker than an internal marker. And I'm also, what I do think a lot about, and that actually I do because 60, it reminds you, whenever you cross a decade, I think that's more of a reminder, an external reminder. Gee, when I look at the generation of my parents, people who were 60, 59 for that matter, they were old people. I mean, they were grown-up, serious people. Well, I guess I am somewhat through the eyes of my children. I'm a grown-up sometimes, but I don't consider myself old in the same way I perceived old people in their 60s when I grew up. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So who would you consider old now?
I don't think it's age-driven.
Okay.
I mean, and I don't want to use the stereotypical, well, age is just a number. No. But I think there are some people who are mentally old when they're 18. And there are some people who are sparkingly fire off their brains left, right, and center young when they're like 82. So we have this tendency to kind of classify people, how old they are around these, we call it external markers. And yes, by definition, I'm closer to death. When I'm 59, statistically, I'm closer to death. If the definition of age is being closer to death, then I'm old. But if the definition of the way I think about it, it's really more, I come back to it, where you're in your life and how do you think, what motivates you, what keeps you going. And their age really is like a number because, come back to it, I know some people who are like in their 30s, 40s who act more older, more controlled or less spontaneous. So I find this whole age concept is somewhat artificial. And at the end of the day, what it really means is you're closer, statistically closer to death.
Okay. So, Michi, you've mentioned a couple times of, as opposed to this idea of age, but just a stage in your life. How would you describe the current stage in your life?
That's a very good question, obviously.
I only ask good questions. There will be no bad questions this entire podcast.
Well, let's see how we get through this. It's certainly a transition stage, a transition in the sense of, not that I'm going to be Michaela next time we speak to each other, more transition in like I have 3 children. My wife and I have 3 children, and the youngest one just graduated from high school. So
Right.
come the summer or the end of the summer, we'll be empty nesters. So I think the way I would describe, or the way I think the stage I am in right now, is more transition from this day-to-day parenthood
Mhm.
in a more structured family life to more kind of empty nesters, or kind of almost re-engineering, setting up for the last third of my life. There just changes in the home structure because the children won't be at home anymore.
Yeah.
I mean, as it is, they will still be coming home during the summer, and we will be going on vacation. Don't get me wrong, it's not that the children are out of our lives, but the fundamental structure will experience a shift. So that is happening in the current stage, and that's not a function of age, but just kind of just biological progress, so that
Okay.
kids get older. It's also a change, like for the last 2.5 years, in terms of the current stage of my life, that shifted from being an employee in a very structured environment to having set up my own business and exploring different paths more as an entrepreneur, which comes with its own challenges, but also its own fun. While I'm actually most likely, and that sounds contradictory again, although I'm working independently, there's a good chance that over the next few weeks, months, I will also go into a more of an employment situation again with one of my clients, but against the background of having joined them as an entrepreneur in independence and a much smaller setup and not some large organization. So the shift is, there's almost like a tectonic shift. Family structure changes. My wife and I have to figure out, kind of almost, rebuild our lives as a couple, as a family, like only two. And that's not implying crisis mode, but it's also going to be very different. It's, from having met, and there's all this excitement and pre-children, then you have a very structured distraction, children, work, blah. And now it's like, okay, now we're going to be more a couple in a late 50s, early 60s, setting the stage kind of for the last third. So there's a lot of shift going on.
Okay.
Where it's going, so far it's going good, but I don't know.
Thinking about a decade ago, where you were in the corporate space, in the day-to-day, how have you, if we look back just 10 years, how do you feel like you've changed over those last 10 years? And if you could go back and give yourself advice when you were a Niner previously, would you do anything different?
Yeah, the would have, could have, should have. Yes, I would do a number of things different if I knew what I know right now, but I didn't know, so I couldn't have done it differently. No, so it's always,
Moot.
BFD. No, I really think the only thing, I mean, I did, the work, and I did okay and all of this. I think really the only thing that I would wholeheartedly, and that I would do differently, and that I tell anybody who cares to listen, is how you spend your time with your children. Why am I saying this? I read, I don't know, a few years ago, finally, probably too late, the statistic that 85% of the time you have with your children, you spend with them between their ages 0 and 18. And then the rest, the remaining 15%, you spend with your children between them being 18 and you dying. Say another 30 years, whatever that is. And far too often was I not aware of that, and kind of went for this dinner with a client, took a trip, stayed later in the office at the cost of maybe not having been there for their homework or for a little shoulder they need to cry on. So I was too absorbed in that. But had I known this number, I think I would have done a different time allocation, for lack of a better word, or be more aware of that, because that is time you just cannot get back. Well, time is the only thing you cannot get back. And let's face it. So I think the value of time. So this is one thing that I would advise myself, and I'm only too happy to share with anybody who cares to listen. I probably also would have listened earlier to somebody like my wife to start earlier reflecting on myself, which is a nice word of saying seeing a therapist, like how fucked I am and how much I, as a function of not being aware, probably dealt with my children in the suboptimal way at times, you know? So I think these are probably the two things. And that's not only like, if I look back a decade, that's probably looking back 2 decades, you know?
Okay.
That's kind of more looking back. I think I did a lot of things right. Well, whatever that means. I am where I am, dude. I'm happy. You know, I've got a good life, and
You've got great hair.
I've got gray hair.
No,
Not
great.
gray,
Great with a
No,
T.
no, no,
Great.
no gray
Yeah.
hair.
No gray hair. I see it.
No,
No
no
gray.
gray hair. It's
No.
funny. I recently went to my very closest friend in Germany to his 60th birthday, and I looked around the room and I gave myself a little pat on the shoulder because all the dudes, either they were bald, some get bald even younger, maybe people on this podcast, or they were either white or gray. And I was literally the only dude who had a full set of hair and not a single white, gray, or anything in there. So I said, well done. I mean, not that and it's, by the way, it's natural. You know, it's not,
Okay, great.
yeah.
I will give you a ribbon at the end of this interview. I will mail it to you, a blue ribbon.
So a
Yeah.
blue ribbon, that's so
It's
appreciated.
yours. Yeah, congratulations.
I love it, you know. And
Michi, self-awareness you brought up. Do you feel like there was a time in your life where you realized I need more self-awareness? And it sounds like you're in that space now. You moved toward that space, but was there an event? How did you know? I think there are a lot of unaware people all over this planet and a lot of deeply aware people. What was that for you?
It's very clear. 5.5 years ago, I mean, my children pretty much said to me, listen, you know, Papa, you're like an asshole. You're like hard to be around. You're permanently grumpy. This is, you know, you're unpleasant to be around. Either you change or you're out of here.
Wow.
And I give, you know, them all, it was driven by my oldest daughter. I give them a lot of credit. I mean, that was hard. It was really, fuck, you know. I mean, so they took me to a family therapist and everybody kind of just spit it out. Shit,
Okay.
man. So that was pretty hard, you know. But yeah, I mean, I then said, okay, it's better late than never. And so I started working with a guy for the last 5 years, and you know, it's a lot of points. So yeah, I mean, I'm still probably grossly unaware on a daily basis of shit I say, how I offend people, and that's you know. But at least as it comes to myself, relation to my family and the members, that has, I think, certainly shifted through that.
Right. What a shift. And kudos to you. I think about older men in my life who have gone down two paths. One path, getting really hard information late in their years and making meaningful changes both for their families and I think about my father particularly, but I've seen other men, some uncles, grandfathers who have chosen not to make those changes, and the suffering just goes on and on and on. So huge kudos to you for that. It's having witnessed it, that's not easy.
No, it's not easy, you know, and I'm not saying, you know, and you know, it's also a process, you know. It's not like they say, okay, and now I'm cured. It's but just having that push of awareness certainly helped.
This push of awareness that you got 5 years ago, you're moving into your 60s. Age is a construct, time is a construct, but it keeps moving. As you think about looking forward, what concerns you or the next stage in your life?
What concerns me most is not what I would call the microenvironment, but the macro environment.
Okay, tell me more.
And I look around what's going on in this country, what's going on in other countries. And I call it, we live sadly what I would describe as a neo-fascist environment. And I don't say that lightly. I think that is my biggest concern. It's like, and this is well beyond this one single man in the White House, you know. I think there's a whole system and machinery behind it that I'm very, very, very concerned about. But it's not singular to the US.
Okay.
It's, you know, I talk to my friends in Europe, there are similar concerns. I talk to my friends across Latin America, there are similar concerns. That is really something that I'm most concerned about, not to mention that the environment, like the physical earth we live in is a big concern. And we keep kind of, you know, just burning it as if, and I also have to always remind myself, it's not that I'm sitting here like that I'm the everyday, I don't get on a plane because it's bad for the environment, or that I've turned vegan because I think, cows fart too much and therefore the world goes under.
So you're not Captain Planet, you're saying?
I try to be conscious about it, but it's, I'm not, more Catholic than the Pope here. Don't get me wrong. Yeah. But the overall kind of environment, I think these are the two factors. The political environment is probably the one that concerns me the most, because it's already, you feel it, it's kind of out there, and it's not good. So that is really single-handedly my biggest concern. Where is this going?
Do you feel like there are things that you can do about it? And if so, what do those look like to help at least reduce some of your worry, if not improve the situation?
So to reduce the worries, no. And I think that's what those driving the system would hope once that we do. Stop worrying and just pretending it's not happening, overwhelming us. So I don't think there's anything that can stop me worrying absent a massive change. I don't want to make this a big political debate in the roots and causes and whatever, but I'm just looking at the status quo. So what do I do about it? Wherever I can, I try to tell people, how bad it is, and, try to raise awareness and have a reality check as much as I can. I mean, unfortunately, hitting a lot of deaf ears. I put on my social media daily countdown to January 20th, 2029.
And so that's the end of the current president's term?
That's, when the next president hopefully gets inaugurated, and we hope that's a shift. But at least look, I come back to it. For me, it's not only about this president. I mean, it's about a whole machinery, a system of evil behind it that I'm concerned about, which have very divergent interests from an open society, as I have gotten to appreciate it.
Thinking about this open society that I think we all, I would argue, collectively aspire to, well, no, maybe that's not fair. Maybe not everyone wants that. Maybe I'm just a little overly optimistic. Thinking about being optimistic and improving the world, and thinking about the extraordinary experiences that you've had, the life transitions, the professional, you've done a lot. And that's one of the things that I admire about you, as we know each other as friends. And you've seen a lot, done a lot, been to a lot of places. You already gave some great advice to how you might give advice to yourself and others who are willing to listen. If you were to handpick another Niner, someone who's 19 or 29 or 39, is there any other advice you'd like to share? And would that be to a specific Niner group as they move into or sit on the cusp of the next big thing?
No, that's a pretty broad question,
Are you saying that's a bad question? Is that... Because
I'm not saying it's a bad question.
Bad
no,
questions.
No. Well, I plead a fifth on that one, but it's not a bad question. But it's so broad, because I think one of the most important things is, and that's easier said than done, be yourself and don't try to be somebody that you think people want you to be. Because we get very caught up, whether it's in corporate life or in relationships or with friends, that we often, and I want to be very clear about it, it's not that I'm immune to this or have been immune to this in life, but it's often easier to almost conform to some norm that others hope you to be than being yourself. And whether this is when you're in your teens and everybody wants to drink heavily and you don't want to drink, you kind of feel you have to drink. Or if nobody wants to drink and you want to drink, you feel you can't drink either. I mean, I'm not saying it's always the drinkers want to make the non-drinker drink. It also works the other way. Right. If you fucking like a beer, have it. Even if everybody tells you alcohol is the worst things in your life, just go for it. So I don't want to classify what one is good, one is bad. So I want to be very clear, because we think invariably we all have the tendency, particularly when it comes to partying or drinking or whatever, these are the good guys, these are the bad guys, you should stand your grounds. Yeah. Well, I think it goes both ways. If you want to come back to it, you want to have a drink, everybody tells you, oh, this is really bad, so what? And vice versa. So I think the being yourself rather than the person others would hope you to be is probably, it might be the hardest, because sometimes it's just easier. But fundamentally, kind of try really, and that runs through every freaking decade. I think sometimes you have to kind of suck it up a bit in a work environment. But again, you never have to kind of completely give yourself up.
And finding what I'm hearing too, finding yourself as you age when your kids confront you and say, Dad, stop being an asshole. So it also sounds like you never really hit that mark. There's always more to learn and more awareness to build as you keep moving towards your authentic self.
Yeah, it's probably the last lesson you learn about yourself is just before that.
And it made that not too deep.
Exactly. It's like, until you push in the oven or whatever. Yeah. Although I've told my family I want to be composted.
Composted, like buried under one of those trees. They put you in a bag under a tree sort of deal?
No, not a bag under, but it's like, you can kind of, these days, it's a term they use, forgot it. You can actually, rather than being just buried or being burned, you can actually be industrially composted, and there's a term for it, I forgot it. Anyway, and then after like 3 months, it's a kind of a very industrial composting mechanism. Your family gets 3 bags of dirt.
Wow. Would it be weird because I know that you like dogs, if you pass, some of your dogs are still living, perhaps you're composted, your family spreads your ashes, and your dogs choose to only piss directly on your ashes for the rest of their lives? Would you feel weird about that?
I wouldn't notice it.
Fair.
I mean, it's, I think there's enough evidence, even in a science hostile environment that we live in, that a bag of compost won't feel when a dog pisses on it. I've never run the experiment, not seen the data, but I'm making a wild guess here.
Not a bad idea for a study.
Yeah, I mean, the impact on dog piss on compost and how it's, human sensitivity. With that said, I hope this is only a very theoretical scenario, because my oldest dog is 11. So I really hope that the scenario, and I hope this does not turn into a clairvoyant interview where in 2 years, oh, fuck, we talked about it. Now the dog pisses on Michi. I mean, so I hope it remains just a theoretical concept. I want to be very clear, because I really hope to have a few more years than my dogs and that I outlive them.
I'm knocking on wood as we speak. May this not be that conversation.
Yes. Yeah.
Right. So you set me up for all of this kind of out there thinking. I want to go back to a conversation you and I had when I invited you to this podcast. And I said, it's called The Niners. And you told me all about the number 9, which, thinking about that, is next level when it comes to, if you want to call it spirituality or mysticism. I don't even know what the right word is, but I know that 9 in German means no, but there's so much more to that. Can you tell me a little bit more about the number 9?
Conversation where I had it was in 1989, actually, although that 9 is relevant in that context. I spent 3 months in Indonesia.
Okay.
And one of my local friends, he told me, 9 is a funny number, because every multiple of 9, the digit sum of every multiple of 9 always distills down to 9. So
it's a
sum
of every yeah, explain that.
So say whatever. 9 times 2 is 18. The digit sum of 8. So 18. 1 plus 8 is 9. 9 times 7 is 63. 6 plus 3 is 9. But it goes. You could do 9 times 111. Yeah. 9 times 911 is 999. So then you add up 9 plus 9 plus 9 is 27. 2 plus 7 is 9.
Whoa.
Every multiple of 9, the digit sum eventually distills down to 9, and it's the only number.
Wow.
It's the only. So it's a mystical number in my view, because sometimes remember these random facts, and this has literally sat with me ever since, because it's fascinating. So what is that?
I'm about to fly to California to see my goddaughter graduate high school, and I'm going to spend the entire 4.5-hour flight doing these math problems.
No, it's like,
wow. Wow.
So, and you could now do 1,683 times 9 equals, now that is 15,147. So that's 6 plus 1 is
7
7 plus
plus
4
4, 11.
is 11 plus 7
to
is 18. 1 plus 8 is 9. Oh,
Michi.
so
Wow.
it's a weird, it's a cosmic number, you know?
Yeah. So you have me thinking about something we talked about at the very beginning of this conversation, home. 9 always goes back to home. And however you multiply 9, wherever it moves, as far as it goes, it distills itself back to its own authentic self.
Sure. Easy. Just something to sit on.
Whoa.
I guess I can nowadays, I accept being an atheist. I used to say non-religious, but I think I've convinced myself I'm an atheist, you know, but still spiritual somewhat. And there are these things that you pick up, say, wow, there's something out there, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And the number 9 is kind of one of these pointers.
I like that. I listened to a podcast years ago about Oliver Sacks, an extraordinary scientist, had an amazing life. He also said he was an atheist over time, but he said, but there's something way bigger, even though I'm an atheist. And for him, it was the color indigo. And he would talk and write all about how it's really hard to actually see the color indigo. But when you do, if you do, that helps ground you in the sense that there is something bigger.
Yeah.
So it sounds like for you, it might be 9. For Oliver Sacks, it's indigo.
You know, and whatever that bigger is, you know.
Yeah.
And maybe we only think there's something bigger to give us, you know, some sense of grounding, you know. Maybe there isn't. I don't know. Actually, came back from London yesterday, had a coffee with a guy I caught up. He made actually a very interesting point about, you know, whether you believe or not, that something along the lines. We talked about like what matters, what doesn't matter, what do we believe, don't believe in, whether, you know, atheist or not. It's kind of funny. Even the people who believe that after death, you know, elevate into heaven or into paradise, it's not so convincing that people really want to die early.
That's a great point.
Which I thought.
My brain feels both saturated and spinning at the same time. So before we wrap up, I'll ask, is there anything else that you want to share?
Just say
please.
something.
Absolutely.
It should not only be the brain, it should also be the heart. Because there's only so much we achieve with this. I know I'm generally considered a soulless person.
It's true.
But I mean, I'm a Wall Street guy, you know, but so I am considered soulless. But at the end of the day, the brain, and that's probably, I come back to this point that you ask me what advice do I give people over time? And I don't mean a very stereotypical, you know, new age way, but more like, honestly, I think we got to think not only with your brains, but we also got to really think with our heart. And I think we've become so absorbed in just being rational beings, and everything has to be kind of, you know, backed up and justified, and every step has to be a rational way. Sometimes lead with your heart. I mean, the gut feeling. The gut feeling comes from something, and it's almost an art. If it doesn't feel right, chances are it isn't right. Not everything doesn't feel right means it's bad, but at least think about it. If it doesn't feel right, think about it, or let this bubble up. Why it doesn't feel right? And obviously I'm taking a little bit of the piss out of you by saying, oh, only your brain is overwhelmed, but there's a serious point behind it, which I really think, the gut feeling, which is the heart or instinct, we are more than our brains. I mean, we distinguish ourselves from the rest of, you know, the biological population by having a brain, but we also distinguish ourselves by having a heart. I'll leave it there.
Michi, thank you so much.
You're very welcome. Thank you for having me.
Leading from the heart, thinking from the heart, engaging the heart in more of what we do. I'm so grateful for this conversation. You got me thinking completely differently about the number 9. The more I learn about it, the more the interviews I do, the more I learn about how powerful and mystical this number is. Folks, thanks for joining us. My name is Tim Cunningham. Music has been provided for us, the intro and outro music by my friend Jen Cornell. You can learn more about her work at jencello.com. And in the next few days, I'll be dropping our next interview. This is my friend Marcy. Marcy's 29, and she's a prolific artist here in Atlanta. I look forward to that interview and continuing to learn from all of our Niners. Thanks again for joining us.